All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. Hope everyone's been enjoying the conference so far. I know it's been a jam-packed couple of days. There's been a lot of exciting announcements from the C3 side, and get to hear a lot about some of the success others are having in their adoption stories, and where C3 fits into their broader AI strategy. And with that, today in this session, we're hoping to focus on how to accelerate value realization on the C3 AI platform using custom and scaled deployments. With that, my name is Edwin Webster. I lead our technical capability team at Fractal Analytics. I'm joined by two of my colleagues, David McClellan, as well as Anton Bursch, one of our solutions architects, as well as Amrita from the C3 AI team. So let's get to the chase. Only 26% of AI projects make it beyond the initial pilot, and that's a big problem. And what we've been hearing over the past 2 days is that C3 is bucking that trend. We're able to move beyond. We're able to, having a standardized platform approach, we're able to achieve success in ways that others just are not. And so with that, we'd like to focus this session today, explain why to some extent. So why is C3 AI succeeding where others are failing? We'll talk about some of the keys to success that we see working with customers of the C3 and the adopters of the platform, how to maximize that ROI with the investment that you're putting into the platform, as well as some of our top lessons learned in the market working as an implementer. So with that, I'd like to hand things over to Amrita, who will speak a little bit about why C3 is succeeding where others are failing.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Okay, so like you've heard on the stage, a lot of our implementations are really reaching scale. So what do we do differently that's enabling this? So essentially, we've invested in a standardized approach where we can leverage this as many times and as much as possible. So in that case, we essentially have a platform which provides, essentially more value than any single app or solution. So a standard journey with C3, we typically start at a pilot, usually 3 to 6 months kind of time frame. We, scope it, define kind of what the ROI use case could be on that. And once we've proven it out, we then move into sort of scaling that particular use case to maybe the rest of the facilities or any number of things. This is usually around 6 months to a year's worth of effort. And then with our largest customers, we then advance into a center of excellence. And in this mode of operating, they essentially really own kind of the development, the customization, the features, and can build any number of things. So ultimately, this leads to kind of very good, efficient development of these particular applications, as well as a mature organization which knows how to get its users to adopt that AI technology. So just a time to value kind of scale, 26% less cost and effort. A lot of this is based on the standardized processes we have, as well as the core technology of the platform itself. So just an example, from an existing kind of relationship that we have, we start out with an initial application. In this case, could be reliability, and we do it for 10 pumps, small scope. So then we say, okay, great, we did that, it's working. Let's then add a different type of equipment. So we move on to boilers, and then we scale up the pumps. So we know how to do the pumps, we scale them out, and increase the number, and then we add a new type of equipment. Ultimately, those then go into sustain mode. So what we do as we're transitioning is then we can start to configure a new application. So instead of scaling the same application to different pieces of equipment, we can now move on to another use case. In this case, process optimization is a very nice stepping stone on top of reliability. You can leverage a lot of the existing data, the existing modeling work, and really get a benefit there. So then we can quickly add on a few processes. From there, we can go then to the plants in production schedule optimization, and then ultimately layer on energy management along with this. And so what you'll see is that there will be kind of an increase in your people supporting this for some time. But once you reach sustainment, then it really drops off, and you just see the benefit. Users use it. You have a few folks who are proficient and can help do any troubleshooting, support, et cetera, or modification of models through time. So essentially, we do provide an end-to-end AI platform, and ultimately, you have to consider the entire IT ecosystem for success. So we really have this targeted approach where we're thinking about all of these different sectors here, and really focusing on that and leveraging kind of what we've built across these different areas in order to successfully scale. So I'll hand it back over to Fractal on keys to lasting success with C3.
Think about capturing that value that Amrita was just mentioning. But then as you start to mature and get further down, start to scale that first app, then you start to think about naturally, the business is adopting. How can we take this to the next level? How can we extend this app? The business usually has some ideas. Oh, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? And that's where we start to, see some of that natural organic growth and platform adoption. It takes some time to figure out exactly what the right ways of working. From that perspective, we'll touch on a few things here in a minute, but you're still trying to grow. You're not quite there. You might be trying to build some of your own custom extensions. But over time, what we're seeing in working with others in the market is, you end up in this third category where you're truly leveraging the platform. There's a very clear place for where C3 AI fits into that broader AI strategy, and you're adopted many pilots at this point. You've extended many of those use cases. You've built some custom applications. And that's really where we want to get the folks that we're engaging with, and where we like to see the folks who are adopting the platform. So with that, just an example of a top AI adopter that we've seen in the market, a utilities company that we've worked with extensively. We've taken things from where initially, applications were taking about 6 to 12 months to develop and deploy and get it in the hands of end users from that point of ideation. But over time, we've been able to reduce that down between 2 and 3 months on average for a typical use case. Obviously, depending on the exact requirements, things can fluctuate up or down and from a readiness perspective. But we're able to consistently drive over 5 applications released per year with those constraints using a fairly reasonable team size of about 6 folks. So, if there's additional opportunities to operate in parallel, you can further accelerate considering the values there, and the use cases are ripe for implementation. So with that, some of the keys that what are these top adopters doing differently and how they approach the platform. Back to the point Amrita made, C3 provides an end-to-end platform, but we need to figure out exactly where this fits from a larger strategic perspective. So it starts with that unified strategy, and then on top of that, layering in the right programmatic approach for executing against that strategy. And that's a broad program, but then also very tactical things that we do on an individual use case perspective. And then on top of all of this, the cherry on top being cultivating your IP over time, working on the platform, and really that's what accelerates the value. And so with that, just to go a little bit deeper on the strategy, we're really talking about balancing the business's needs with technical readiness. Some things may have already been implemented on the platform, and there's a whole list of use cases we'd love to work on, but not everything's ripe today. So we need to make sure that we're taking up the right things at the right time, and looking for opportunities to drive synergies across these different use cases as well. And so having that strategy in place then comes down to how do we execute that strategy. How do we coordinate across all of these different use cases, and what needs to be done when, and is there overlap across these different things? And David's going to talk to this a little bit more here in a minute. But this is things that we find are true keys as part of this is having the right division of labor. If we have people who can focus on integrating the right data, we have other folks focusing on building those AI agents and patterns that we can then integrate more broadly throughout the system. Allows us to pick up the right thing and manage those dependencies appropriately, as well as making sure that we're on time, on budget, all of those sorts of things. So with that, the last item here, as we're executing this, we're looking for opportunities to cultivate IP. And this is, the real driver of acceleration here, where and the IP that we're talking about is, IP in the data models, that digital twin of your business, extending that even further beyond some of these base applications, which enables you to then, get reusability, standardization. There's quality control built into the process, where you're then able to reuse some of those patterns that leverage insights only from your business and be able to translate that into things that can help you get to, from that 6 to 12 month development and release cycle down into that 2 to 3 month category that we were talking about. So with that, I'd like to invite up David McClellan, who will talk about, how we actually do this with our customers. Thanks, Anton.
All right, so just an overview slide before we dive deep into each of these. We want to start with a full strategic planning exercise with the business. I'm sure you've all seen that C3 does an excellent job selling a business solution for an actual problem, not an IT app or something like that. But what that means is that we need to get all the different lines of business together to understand what those priority needs are. And as amazing as all of the C3 AI apps are, there are many other needs that the business has. And we can only do so many of those as AI app pilots that scale themselves out. The rest of those, you're going to get a lot more value if you can build those on C3 once you've invested in that platform than by going and building another platform or doing it open source or having a litany of complex stuff to integrate still. So the true vision that C3 AI is after is to bring those into C3 and then get the value out of those. And what that means is we need to take all those business units, understand their priorities for the next year, and build that into a roadmap, right? And then from there, we can work on designing and prototyping with those different lines of business to understand their exact requirements and build that into a standard software development lifecycle. You're all familiar with it. It's a process by which we've reached a lot of our own maturity and success over time, right? And then as you build up those competencies, build up your internal talent base on C3, and build up that maturity with the environment, with the code languages, with everything else, you'll drive a lot of that efficiency. And one of those things that we'll be looking at is how to build that library of assets that takes that development time from a year or 6 months down to 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months because you've built up that maturity. It's the same learning curve that we've always followed for how to get better and faster at doing things, but it's a set of assets that come with for this relatively specialized platform that can leverage a lot of what we're able to do. So as an example, we've kind of built a utilities set of use cases here. But what you end up doing is you run workshops with each of these businesses, and you understand their needs directly from them. And then you build that into these scenario canvases. Down in the bottom right is an example of this, but you spec out exactly what the data required is, what the analysis is likely to be, what we think it's going to require for a timeline, and get a good spec doc ready once you're going to go and build it. You have an outline, so it's not necessarily full waterfall. Everything in data science still requires an agile approach, but you have a good spec to start, and you have a good understanding of what you think it's going to require because the end users have given you exactly what you're looking for. Once you have that, you can then take it and put it into, our favorite tool is a 2x2, prioritizing it for value versus feasibility. And then you basically categorize them by all the different lines of business, and maybe it's not the most valuable one out there or the most feasible, but a combination of both, and then the business agrees on what its strategic priorities are by the end of it. And this gets periodically reviewed by the team, typically on either a biannual or annual basis. As needs change, as strategic priorities update, you always have to keep going back to this. This is a living function within your business. An AI Center of Excellence is not a person, it's not a single app, it's a function inside of your business where you have a team of data scientists working with the business to understand what they need and delivering it over and over again. So once you have that roadmap, you can split the work streams out by the different technology pieces, you can identify priorities, dependencies, and what you're going to get when, and that can turn into a monthly update or a release cadence of announcements that your team can consistently show what they're delivering, what they're updating, known issues, new features, things like that. And that all follows your standard agile process to make sure that you're delivering everything consistently while staying flexible. If something comes up or somebody takes a long vacation, you can get everything done. One of the things that Fractal has built based off of the ample amount of work we've done designing custom applications on top of the C3 AI platform is a graphical builder for the UI in C3 AI. Interestingly enough, to build the underlying components, all of the data flows and everything else, there's nice builders for all of that, but to prototype the actual UI or build it, you have to write the code by hand today typically. But Fractal is invested in putting together a tool to accelerate this, mostly for our own benefit, because we're building so many of these, we can reduce the time to develop them dramatically. But this sort of workflow where you're working side by side with the business to wireframe out what this app is going to look like, and then this can, with a few clicks and a few minutes, live already inside of the C3 environment, be published as a real application that does exactly what it shows it's going to do, and it's already live connected to the C3 type system and all of your data put together. And that way you can get to that kind of Power BI-esque, very nice, what you see is what you get, build a dashboard experience. So these are some of the tools that we use and cultivate as assets for our business, where you can repeatedly build out things for something that doesn't necessarily meet that high bar of getting the business to budget for it and put on the roadmap as something else, and makes AI, or C3 AI as a system, a really nice place for your developers and your business users to live, because it's not just a report, it's not just a dashboard. It's a true application that can send data back out, it can talk to your ERP or your CRM, and you can build functions like this very quickly because it's already 80–90% there. One of these pieces, and I've covered a lot of this already, but on the left side in blue, you can see you're working with your business, you're creating your strategic priorities, and you're coming up with what your roadmap is. Then once you get into the gray section, you're in that iterative, agile development cycle where you're working on things. Nothing in data science is ever a linear path, and something works, something doesn't work, and you check several different pieces of this as you go, and then you hit that hard gate, number 5, to go, no go. Are we going to deploy? Does it meet the performance requirements? And then you send it out into the wild. But the solution isn't done that. It's really just starting its journey. And you have to think about the full life cycle of how these come together, because you're now responsible for maintaining that app inside of the business. And one of the really fantastic pieces of the C3 AI platform is that it automates and supports a lot of these functions for you with very easy workflows and a ton of things that are built on top of it. But you still need to think about how this is going to require personnel, what you're going to do to improve it over time. If somebody creates a feature request, that then sends it back into a development cycle for its vNext. And you should think of these C3 AI apps not just as it's done when it's been released 100 different lines or things like that, but it's done when the business is happy with everything that it does, right? And that will become a feature request in a few years when now they want it to do something more, because the business always wants more. So in that vein, maybe Edwin, I can pass this back to you in a minute, but in that vein, we cultivate a library of different code snippets, assets like apps or visuals and custom code that we're going to reuse, because this is what the business had said, this is how we want it to look, this is how it needs to feel or perform. And then those different flows, all built on top of C3 AI, are relatively safe investments because the platform is standardized. If you're going to go and build a bunch of custom UI or custom technologies on an open source or random environment that you've curated this architecture of everything over 20 years, right? That can be risky to invest in building these things on top of it, because those underlying technologies are constantly changing, right? So one of the safe things that we've found with this is that over several years, these apps don't need to be reworked all of the time. And those code snippets are actually reducing development time, because you took that effort to avoid tech debt and you made it right the first time, and you can leverage that in the future. The result is to reduce that development time. Of course, you'll take a little bit longer at start because you don't have any of those assets. But once you get those accelerators in, those release cycles quicken, and the time required to do everything shrinks quite a bit. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Edwin because he's got some great lessons learned as the actual guy leading the teams doing a lot of this.
So as you heard from David, we have a very systematic approach that we've observed that works well with these various adopters of the platform, helping them to get to that mature state and able to really, not only scale the pilots that you're working on, but also to start doing your own development, collecting your own assets, able to really accelerate the value creation on the platform. So with that, just to summarize a few lessons that we have, and we'll leave you with this here today and then, open it up for discussion. But really just want to, things that we've noticed are most important is investing early in pilot tangential use cases. You've already made an investment on these different pilot applications. How can we tap back into those data models, and how can we then, answer some additional questions for the business? As David mentioned, the business always wants more. They're not satisfied. How can we bring in a couple new data sources, use some of those acceleration tools from a reporting perspective, and be able to drive incremental value and make speed up that value generation. So that's a really powerful way that we're finding that some of these adopters are extracting additional value. Secondarily, building that library of reusable assets, IP, so to speak, to gain even more of a competitive advantage in the agentic AI area on the platform. So having things that you can pair with what we have and able to develop against those backlogs much more quickly, driving down that time to value. And so that's something that, without doing this, you're stuck at that 6 to 12 month time frame. So period. It's one of those things where we need to really drive these efficiencies, curate these assets over time, because, not only from a data perspective, but also from a technical asset perspective, that's where we're realizing a lot of value. And then the last point here is just that, if you do the above correctly and you have that clear strategy in place that we talked about, that's where we really find that C3 can become a center of gravity of sorts, where you're looking at the comprehensive governed approach, the tooling that the platform provides. You're able to consistently drive value on many different use cases using that, and then able to maybe start thinking about how after you've achieved some of that success and those proof points, maybe you want to think about bringing in some existing ML or AI applications and bring them under the same level of governance, to make sure that there's a consistent approach, across the organization. So those are, 3 key points or 3 lessons learned that we have that we feel are most critical, and, common themes that we've seen with, the most successful C3 AI adopters out there in the market. And so with that, we'd like to open things up here for a little bit of Q&A.
Hi, thank you for that talk. So I'm one of the general managers who build base apps in C3, and I'm interested, as an implementer, what are some things we can do to make a base app even better out of the gate for the work that you then have to do for configuring and extensions? Thank you.
Sure. So from a base app perspective, a lot of the things that we find, there's documentation out there. We understand there's updated documentation through the announcements this week even. So we're really excited to experience, some of those things. I think additionally, being able to accelerate in terms of an individual self-service kind of perspective on adapting some of these. I think, tools like data fusion and things like that, those are really promising announcements this week. We have yet to get our hands on those, but there's a lot of things out there that from a base application perspective, we help C3 itself with a lot of R&D on those base applications. So we do have some expertise naturally, but I think from what we're observing with customers and their ability to extend and build on top, that's where, having, very crisp documentation, some of those AI assistant features paired with, strong data integration capabilities allows us to, we showed some things that accelerate UI development and things of that nature, but being able to, align the dots across the rest of the value chain, I think that those are really powerful things.
Anton, is there any requests you might have as an engineer that works on C3 day to day?
That I have for C3?
Yeah, what would you want the base apps to do? My opinion on that is generally the base apps are all excellent, right? They don't lack a lot of features. Maybe there's a small feature on PSO that allows you to look at the previous day's results and see exactly what happened when you optimize the schedule and be able to touch that uplift as an example. Those are really small things, right? And we can support that with those little customizations to make it just right for the business. But generally speaking, the base apps are an excellent starting point. They get you very far very quickly. And what we're looking at is how to build around and on top of those so that even if there's 10 or 20 things in the supply chain suite maybe in 10 years, there's still 40 or 100 use cases in the supply chain that a business might have needs for. So we don't necessarily want to over-index on building a custom solution for every small use case, but we want to build on top of those with specific solutions for your business so that you get exactly what you need and leverage the platform to do that. That's a great way to get the value out of it.
I do have a comment, and that is, we mentioned the large utility that we've been working with, and I've been working with for the last few years, and that's kind of being in the trenches with a company that has 1 million needs, a company that's, I would always say, first thing I discovered is that they're a utility, so they are always just trying to keep their head above water. There is so much work that needs to be done. There's so many things that they need to do. And of course, one of the big things about C3 is all these companies, especially if they're like 100 or plus years old, they got all these dozens of data sources. They've got all these applications. Some of them, the companies don't exist anymore. But people are using it. They've got their workflows. They've got tons of people inside the company that are doing things. And in the real world, whenever you work with these people, the first thing that I found happen is once they start seeing something that C3 can do, they all have things that they want to do immediately, and they wanted to do it kind of similar to the way that it was done before, but better. So, my work is to go in there and not just give them what they've always wished that they had through our development with C3, but also to help them kind of imagine what they could have. And that's not like head in the clouds kind of thing. I mean, for real, people are scared of AI taking everyone's jobs away, but where I'm at, I'm like, guys, you're not gonna lose your jobs. You're just gonna be able to do your job, actually, because there's just so much work to do. There's not enough people to do it, and people are expensive. So the reality of the situation is that, whenever I'm talking to a company, I wanna go talk to all these different engineering teams or whatever kind of teams they have, because I wanna find out what they wish that they had that, let's be honest, is too expensive, or took too much time, or was too risky to actually be able to do it. The power of C3, I don't work for them, I work for Fractal, but I've been working with them for years. The power is that there's finally somebody who went and made a platform that's quick to develop on, not just AI solutions, but all the other analytical solutions that you have. So if you're a utility, what are you trying to do? You're like, okay, I need to be prepared for electric cars. I need to be prepared for heat pumps. I need to make sure people aren't getting electrocuted. I need to make sure that people aren't getting blown up. Well, all of these problems, whether using AI to go in there and look at the data to try to predict when that's gonna happen, why is it important? You've gotta get years out ahead on some of these things, because it's extremely expensive to go and fix them, and you don't wanna just send people out after the problem happened. And let's just be honest, if you're a power company, you're just spending your time like a firefighter putting out fires. But what if you could actually get ahead of everything? What if you could actually not just catch up and not have to be drowning, but actually start moving ahead and take all those, this is what I say, take all those super smart people that work at your company that are really expensive and give them something to work with where they can actually not only just do the job you're asking them to do, but be creative and innovate solutions to do, actually make your business better. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if instead of just constantly trying to keep up with your customers' demands, if you can start expanding, make them happy because you're actually able to deliver it. And I've been working with AI for the last 10 years, back when you had to do it in C++, and as a developer, I'm very actually genuinely excited. I could be doing a lot of different things. I came over and did this because it's grown-up work, used to do video games. And what I'm seeing here is a real potential for world-changing things. There's these big companies. It's not super exciting when you're a 20-year-old to think about working for all the companies that actually quietly make the world go round. But they are the companies that make the world go round. This is where you can actually take the super smart people and actually do something meaningful. And they all want to do something meaningful. I'm like, Facebook's fun. It's not meaningful. Come over here and come over here and solve real problems and get to work with like super smart people. I love working with the engineers that are at the power company I can't mention. But I love working with them, and I love working with like our guys. You know, we started working with C3, and you know, like it was just me at first at the power company, and I was like, this is cool. I like C3. I see where we can go with this. I helped them out. That's how we went from 18 months to turn a use case around to 3. And by the way, that's 3 months offset. So we've got data discovery happening at the same time for the other use case. We're doing back-end development, and at the same time, we're doing the application development. So we are actually releasing a use case a month. That's the point where we got to the, you know, to speed things up. And that little application thing, I built that with my guys because, you know, we had something we wanted to be able to do faster. Because doing all this work is expensive, and C3 is this, you know, very niche but very extremely powerful ecosystem. And the way to be able to make it less expensive to do all the things that you need to do is to get really smart tools and really smart people. And as I was telling something earlier today, when you have someone like our team here, get people that are looking for an opportunity to do something meaningful, like who will actually care, who will work with your engineers when they're like, yeah, my job's on the line if someone blows up off the sidewalk when this goes off. You know, it's like you want to save the people from getting hurt, but you also want the people who are working for you to be actually excited and happy. I mean, like, wouldn't it be nice if your engineers and stuff like that were actually happy because they weren't just like overloaded constantly? This is genuinely, like, we're in a new age here. It's all happening, and C3 they weren't smart enough to see the future, and now they get to be ahead of the pack. But like, now there's an actual opportunity where we can take all these smart people and actually kind of unleash them. And I am one of those smart people. I'm not a salesperson, but I'm telling you as a kind of testimonial, as a smart person, even though my brother is smarter, as a smart person, I'm actually excited about this. I love the idea that I can get in and work with companies and actually solve their problems. And this is the best opportunity I've ever actually seen to be able to do it. It's like, you know, on the cutting edge, but let's just be honest. Everybody's got to get on this train because it's going, and you're going to get left behind, or you're going to be able to jump on and actually, you know, start enjoying the benefits from it. But this is why I didn't have a speaking slot, because I will go on and on. But like, I'll just tell you, as somebody who's been doing this for a while now, with C3, I have an enormous amount of faith in the people at C3. I work with them. We've got like 100 people. They all come through me because I'm like the senior guy at Fractal. And I want to make sure that they're all actually trained and ready to hit the ground running when they go work for C3. And they're working for a lot of the companies on the things that C3 is doing. Like, this is, like, for me, it's like really important. And it can be so inspiring for these, especially young developers, but even senior developers who've been waiting their whole life to actually do something cool. And I go, guess what? The cool thing isn't video games. I did that. The cool thing is go to these real companies that do real things, that are actually the ones that have credit for making our civilization work. Go in there, solve problems for them, and you're going to feel really, really, really great and like you did something, and that your brains got utilized. So, yeah. I know there's other kinds of competitors and stuff like that out there to do it, but having done this for a few years with these guys kind of won my faith over, and that's why I kept bugging us. I was like, let's get a better and better partnership with these guys, because we've got so many people out there that need help, and we have the experience, we've gone through it, so we have like the ability to help people like learn how do you break through from, like Edwin said, the pilot. How do you break through from that to actually getting this across your company? And the answer to that question is one piece at a time, and you earn people's trust by succeeding. And the more you succeed, the more it opens up their minds to the possibility that, hey, that worked, let's try this out. And so, you know, that's what we've done for the last few years, and we're actually excited about continuing to do it with all of you guys. So, sorry, I will stop speaking. I'm excited.
Yeah,
what can I say?
It's fantastic. We do still have plenty of time left. Anybody have any other questions? All right, well, we can also let you all go a little bit early.
Yeah.
But the demo and the application that Edwin and Anton and his team have built is available as a kind of a demo at the booth. If you're interested, we can come by and show you some more. But thank you all very much. I really appreciate your time, and have a great rest of your conference.
Thanks, everybody.